welcome to Ditch Digger CEO, Erik Weir. I stalked you a little bit, got a couple friends of mine that know you, and had a great conversation with you not long ago to understand you're a cool dude, and we want to hear your story, buddy. So I've got my friend and one of our teammates here at the Rayvine Group, a young man, Robbie, that's on with us, and we'd like to get a couple perspectives. I like Robbie asking his millennial-minded questions to you, as well as.
Here you go, Robbie. I'm ready.
Yeah, we got you covered.
I've got millennials in my house.
So you know what they look like.
Bring them.
That's good.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah,
I've got a few of them also. So yeah, they're a different breed. That's why I put them on with us. So welcome to Ditch Digger CEO, brother, and thanks for spending the time with us.
Good to be here. Good to be here. Love it.
So our goal, Erik, is always on Ditch Digger CEO, is really to dive in to try and come up with, figure out the nuggets for success that you found, and as we do always, and Robbie at the end of the podcast will kind of take some notes, and he's going to throw out those notes of what he found as the nuggets of success, the laws of success that he got out of our conversation. Okay, so that's kind of our goal. So we want to start out with, who the hell are you, man? Who are you today, Erik, and what? How do you think about the stuff you're doing today? And then we're going to bounce into kind of your upbringing after that. So
let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. Well, my name is Erik Weir, father of five sons. I've got them all the way from 22 down to age 7. It's a fantastic fun. I have 1 in graduate school, 2 in college, and 2 in private school. So I need to keep working, but it's a lot of fun. Tremendous amount of fun. So today I do everything from money management. We've helped in the marketing and finance of faith-based films. We've either marketed or financed between 6 or 7 of the top 10 grossing faith-based films of the last decade. We also are into physical real estate. You've heard of Topgolf. We own a number of Topgolfs in the U.S., and we are now beginning to develop some in Western Europe. We also develop or finance multi-purpose real estate, anything from a couple 100,000-foot office tower to. Then we also involved in self-storage, and we run some money management. And our money management, we have maybe 70 clients we work with. 4 or 5 of them have been on the Forbes list or are currently on the Forbes list. The rest are not. And we manage money in what they call long-only portfolios, meaning you buy things and hope they go up. And we also do a long-short, where you kind of try to take advantage of moves in the market and whether the market's going up or down. So that's what we do. So we have about 18 people who work with me, and we serve about 70 families.
Wow. So serving 70 families, it's people that believe enough in you to invest some money in the things you're doing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They believe in us. They believe in our team. They believe in our process. And oftentimes they'll have the larger the client, oftentimes we'll have maybe a smaller piece of their overall net worth. But we try to do things that are fun to us, that are interesting, and that are profitable. For Topgolf, I enjoy it. It's fun. I'm not a great golfer, but I enjoy it. But I feel a lot better when I'm hitting like a 30-40 yard shot and getting points, and I'm eating some having iced tea and eating some chicken wings, and I'm like, this isn't so bad, So I tried it, and next thing you know, we own a number of them, and Topgolf is our tenant. And then we've got into self-storage. Nobody likes to throw anything away. When I was in college, that was my thesis, was self-storage. Back then, it's a long time ago, but in the 80s, people had about nationwide, each person would have about 1 foot of demand for storage. Today, it's almost 11. So we've had 1,100% growth in the last 30 some odd years for demand for self-storage, and it only appears to be growing. And then we like to invest in securities or in companies that are also in their own rights transformative and future oriented as well, and that would be in our marketable securities. And on the film side, we like things that have an impact and have a message. So if we can help either market it or finance it, and not necessarily by ourselves, but that's something we enjoy doing as well.
That sounds like such fun stuff. You're doing things you're passionate about, you're really diving in to understand fully. And how cool is that, right? When you can live your life having fun and everything you're doing and creating value, right?
Yeah.
And the impact of those films, that's got to be cool as heck. I mean,
it makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Tell us about some of those films.
Well, there are those that we financed. Like one's called Unbroken: Path to Redemption, and it was the story of Louis Zamperini. He was in a World War II aircraft that went down. He floated about 80 days and fought off 2 or 3 shark attacks. He ended up landing on the Marshall Islands, and then he was taken as a POW. The gentleman that was over him was nicknamed the Bird, and the Bird was one of the most vicious people, and was actually named one of the top 100 war criminals of World War II. And he saw his strength of character, and the movie's called Unbroken, and Angelina Jolie made the first movie, Unbroken, and we told the story of his redemption called Unbroken: Path to Redemption after he comes back home to America. And I'll say that Angelina Jolie was super easy to work with. She let us keep a few minutes of footage from the first movie to kind of use to create scope and scale of the new movie. And our story picks up. He crashes. He flows. He fights off sharks. He gets taken to Marshall Island, and then he was an Olympic athlete, and he was the one where Adolf Hitler, and they expected him to be the first one to break the 4-minute mile. He didn't. Interesting enough, on the boat over to Europe for the Olympics, he gained 12 pounds because he hadn't had food like that, right? So he had so much fun. But in the race, he did well. He ended up meeting Adolf Hitler. But the Birdman was also an athlete, the head of the POW camp. He recognized him and knew that if he could break his ego, his pride, break him down as a person, then he would demoralize all the troops under his care. Absolutely. So he got the entire group of POWs to stand in a straight line and punch him in the face.
Yep.
And one at a time. If they didn't hit him hard, they had to do it again. And Louis was like, "Hit me. Is that all you got? Hit me. Is that all?" And it was just like all the people cycled through. And he just built a lot of bitterness and unforgiveness in his heart. And when he got back home, he became an alcoholic, and he went to a Billy Graham crusade, and he left in a huff, didn't want to go. And then in the movie, we actually got Billy Graham's grandson to play Billy Graham. So that was a lot of fun. We shot it in California. And then on the second time, he became a Christian, but more than that, he repented. A lot of us are professing Christ, or we love Christ, or we have a different type of walk. But he was somebody who confessed Christ, repented, and made his life really about forgiving and modeling forgiveness. So he goes back to Japan and finds the people who tortured him and forgave them. And out of that, I mean, he never reconnected with the Bird. He tried several times, but never worked. But just about everybody else he did. And I think it was between 400 and 600 churches have come out of that movement. That was a movement, but out of his modeling forgiveness and encouraging people in Japan. It was amazing.
I love the movie, Eric, the first one, and I got to see the second one now. But Louis was a friend of a good friend of mine, one of my mentors here. He's an 83 or 4-year-old guy here in the Chicagoland area. That's a great entrepreneur, very successful guy in manufacturing and distribution businesses, and I paved driveways for the guy years ago. He became one of my favorite people and my favorite mentors still today. Is my buddy, Fran Houlihan. And Fran was friends with Louis, and Louis would come to town. He would stay with Fran, and right before the first movie came out, he was going to be in town with him, and he goes, "Gary, you got to meet my friend. You're a guy that loves inspiration. You're an inspiring guy. You're going to love Louis. You got to meet him." And he came to town. He called me, and I was out of town, so I didn't get to hang out with him and meet him.
Oh, no way!
But he passed away a few years later, right? But what an amazing guy this guy was.
Amazing
right?
Story, yeah, amazing story.
Story. I mean, think of the difference he made in the world, right? When you talk about churches that were built around him, forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
How incredible! What an incredible gift he was to the world, and how cool is that, right?
It's such a model, because you look at like so many people I've talked to, or they don't have a very good relationship with their parents or mom or dad or sibling or somebody in life, and some people even ask them, hey, please forgive me, but they have a hard time doing it. But imagine being tortured physically for several years and then seeking people out who are not wanting forgiveness and granting it anyway. And then the power of the reception of them getting that is just remarkable. And they don't know how to take it because they even ask for it. They don't feel, they have a hard time receiving it because they don't even feel they're deserving of it. You know, some part of them wants to punish themselves for their own crimes. And oftentimes in life, that's what we do ourselves. We have maybe we're punishing ourselves in a way, you know, so it's a good model.
So Erik, you know, my wife passed away a little over a month ago now, and at our celebration of life, the thing that you know, we're on lockdown in Illinois, but you know, we have a club up there that I was telling you about, the golf club, that I want you to come in. You're going to be a national member from now on, so don't forget.
I'm ready. I'm breaking 100 now, man. You may not be looking. I might give it a foot wedge, but
you're going to be happy to break 100. But so at the ceremony, the funeral at our church, you can only have like a third occupancy. So we ended up at 150 people is the most, and so it was all family and very good close friends.
Sure.
But then I said, hey, but we've got a celebration of life at the club. It's whoever wants to come can come. It's a big building, and we're gonna anybody wants to be. So I didn't get out to everybody. I didn't focus on inviting everybody and all that, but it was just out there on Caring Bridge, and some of my closest friends knew I was scheduling that thing, and we had over 800 people came through. With the COVID issues, with people being afraid of our Marxist governor's rules, right? Over 800 people came, and I didn't notify most of my friends because if they find out, they find out. But I didn't have the time to really organize it. But bottom line is, the message I told I thought, what's a message my wife would want people to know that I could give when I talk about her, because I talked about it for 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was. And I said, here's the deal. Everybody there that knew Cheryl knew that she was a person that, number one, the most God-loving person you ever want to meet. But anybody would ever meet her knows that she would never talk ill about somebody else ever. If they're there in front of her, she would challenge people in the way they thought, without offending them, without other people around. She would say exactly what's on her mind. But otherwise, if there are other people in the room and that person's not there and people are talking about somebody, she's the one that's going to stand up and say, you know what, I'm not perfect. And I sure would want people talking about me if I'm not, present. Is it really the right thing to do, right? She would do this all the time. And whenever, I never say all the time, but if it was in front of her like that, she would do it. Or if I wasn't getting along with my father or my brother or an old friend, she would always really pretty much, demand me to go make sure that I rekindle that. If I loved somebody before, I need to continue to love them and forgive them for whatever I think they did. And so she, my father and I are way closer than I'd ever be if it wasn't for her. My brother and I, my sisters and I, her brothers and our family. Bottom line is, she constantly brought people together. And she constantly brought people closer to God, right? Because she was an example.
Sure.
Just amazing example of faith that you just don't see every day, right?
No, you don't see it.
So there's no doubt. So at that ceremony, I said, hey, what would Cheryl want you to do? And I said, if everybody here, and there were maybe 400 or 500 people at the time listening, I said, hey, if everybody here could just think about a person in their life that they loved at one time, maybe a family member, maybe a friend. And reach out to them and have the conversation with them, forgiving them for whatever it is that you weren't happy about, right? Forget about them forgiving you for whatever they think, right? Just forgive them. And Cheryl would ask all of you to think that way, right? And then if all things are great and you have no issues in your friendships or your family, then just go home and pray to God that you can get closer to God, because she would ask you to do that. How can you get closer to your faith, whatever your faith is? And so those, just one of those two things, do it tonight when you go home or the next day or two. And I got tons of texts back over the next text, emails, and phone calls over the next couple of days that my friends of ours, hey, guess what? I reached out to my brother. I hadn't talked to him for years, and I had a great conversation. Hey, you know what? I haven't gone to church in years. I'm gonna start going again because I love my community, my church. I just haven't thought I had time. So all these conversations. But again, one person can make a huge difference in this world if they're people that can inspire through their own actions.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And my wife, in her own way, was very philanthropic, did amazing things for the community. The newspaper that I'm not friendly with because I'm a conservative wanted to write an article about her because they knew who she was. and they wrote a beautiful article about her. And I couldn't believe how nice it was in the short time they interviewed me and a few people, but they knew her also. And so all these things matter because she made a huge difference in the world. And Louis, man, think of the difference he made in the world with the life he taught. And so when we think about, you and I and people like us that have had some nice success in our lives and we got some good stuff going on, right? How can we lead our lives in the future to make a difference in the world? And you're doing that when you're
right.
supporting stuff like these movies that are stories of great messages. When you're supporting these businesses that have the right core values and are creating opportunity, right? How fun is it, right?
It's so much fun. Yeah, I love it. I love it.
So I want to hear about go back to your upbringing. What made Erik who he is, and tell me about how you grew up and you probably grew up with a boatload of money. Somebody just said, "Hey, little Erik, here's a few $1 million. Get started on your way," right? I'm sure that.
Yeah, I did get the Donald Trump loan. What was that? A small family loan for it $65 million? I think it was. No, so for me, I mean, I've done some real estate. So it's kind of analogy is, it seems like for me, I started by digging a hole. If you build a building, you dig a hole to get started with, and you're kind of going the wrong direction. That's kind of how life started, because you may tell I still have a little bit of a stutter, but at age 5, I was in a car wreck and I lost the ability to speak for a couple of days, and it was very traumatic for me. So I would end up, took me a couple of days to tell the teacher my name. And I don't know what it is about people who stutter, but it's always like your name's like the hardest thing to say. Like Erik Weir was like, it was horrible. But I went to speech therapy, and at age 5, they said, you need to sell lemonade. Get a lemonade stand, put it in front of your house, and that would be the way to go. So my parents are pretty excited about that. So we set a lemonade stand up, and I'm like, I stutter. So I want a sign. So I made a sign that had 50 cents, and I had it up there, had everything ready to go with lemonade to sell, and had change so I could make change for $1. And I'm sitting there, and people go, almost everybody, I don't know why it is, you've got a sign. I was hoping just for direct commerce. Here's 50 cents. I pour the lemonade, done deal. They always had to ask me, hey, how much is it? Or how'd you make it? And how much is it? I'm like, really? So I'm pointing. And I'm like, because F's are hard, man. They're hard. I'm like, 50 cents. How'd you make it? I'm like, you thinking to myself, really? Really? You're asking how I made it? So I'm like, water and powder, So, but what I found out is, man, stuttering was awful at school. But I never got 50 cents. When people would toss a 5 at me, I'm like, $5? This is awesome. I'm taking this show on the road. So I go inside. My parents are like, man, how'd you do it? I'm like, I had $80, man. First M5 is 1972, made $80 cash. My dad's like, wow, I think you did better than I did today. So I'm like, the next day they go out, and I got home early, I'm so jacked up, right? So I go out the next day and I set up another lemonade stand. Only this time I didn't realize about the plastic cups that Mom had. I used our glassware, so I'm using glassware, right? So, my customers, they were really, I guess they're impressed with the upgrade, But they didn't give the glasses back, so they just drove off with them, right? So we get home, my parents are setting up the kitchen table, and they're like, hey, we're so happy for your big sales today. Where are all the glasses? And I said, I sold them all. So I learned about cost of goods sold that day, because
so you had $80 in sales the next day, but you had like $90 in cost.
Yeah, I had some cost of sales I didn't really expect. Yeah, because my parents weren't killing it in business, so $80. Although I was a fat target after selling all their glassware. So that's kind of how I got started, right? And then it went from you couldn't give me a Christmas present, I wouldn't sell it at school. So pretty much that candy, anything. And as I grew up, I started cutting grass. Then I realized I had a lawn allergy, so I kept doing it because I paid well. I charged $15 for grass cutting, and I found neighborhood kids that I could get them to cut it for $5. And it was kind of fun because their parents were like, I'm sure glad Johnny's getting industrious. I mean, cutting grass for this other kid making $5 too. And I said, you just got to use your own lawnmower and gas, but I'm pretty sure I'd get you a gig at $5. So I'd spend my days going around getting neighborhoods, to sign up, and I recruit kids to cut grass for me.
So you're a general contractor, neighborhood general contractor at what? How old?
Yeah, that's what I did. Was a neighborhood general contractor, but I think the labor laws I was violating. I had younger kids, and if they didn't do the work, I was pretty aggressive. Cut the grass, do a good job. Reputation mattered. I knew that.
Wait. So how old were you then as a general?
I was like 11, 12. I started with like a real mower, and I could hardly push it, So I ended up, using my dad's mower and getting other kids to use their dad's mowers, and then I ended up hooking up with a home builder who had subdivisions. So then I would cut their lawns, their model homes for a while.
What'd your workers' compensation insurance look like back then?
Oh man, it was a very skinny policy. Yeah, and complaint was met with amazement. I was pretty surprised by complaining. There was a lot of that too. So I had a fair amount of turnover in my ranks.
I hear you.
So then move on to buying and selling cars. Bought my first car when I was 13 and couldn't drive it, but my brother knew how to fix them, so I'd front the money and he'd help me with the work, and we'd split it. And then by 16, we're going to auto auctions, buying several cars at a time, and did that. I don't know how many cars I've owned. And 18, I got my real estate license. That same year, I earned my first black belt, and with the Chuck Norris Super System, mentor. So one of my mentors was Chuck Norris. He was my he
Get out of here.
Yeah. He was awesome, and I'm not super tight with him, but he would come down every, a couple times a year, and it was like a franchise where my instructor had his agreement. So he would come down and sit on black belt tests, and you would just listen for pearls of wisdom. And he had something called Code of Ethics, which I appreciate the older I get, but he would do things like, be as enthusiastic about the success of others as you are about your own. Mm-hmm. And you go, wow, okay. And, if you have nothing good to say about somebody, don't say anything. Oh, interesting. And, no success outside the home will compensate for failure inside the home. I'm like, oh, wow. And these are all codes of ethics that he had. 10, we would memorize them. And I was like, these are pretty solid. And then, learning character things, at tests where we have people who were going for a black belt. One example really sticks in my mind is the guy was, pretty good, but on the edge. Wasn't sure if he'd make it or not. And they have multiple schools come together. It's kind of a big deal when you come to town. So they would say, well, this guy's worked hard. He didn't have a great test, but he's if you fail him, he's going to quit. Oh, okay. Well, then we're failing him. And he said, because you need to learn to handle failure. And that was something they really tried to work on, is if you fail, failure is never fatal unless it's final. So don't quit. And that was the kind of things that growing up and learning respect and yes sir, no sir, and bowing and all that was good. And then I got my real estate license just for childhood early stuff. And when I was 18, and then I syndicated my first shopping center, I think 18 or 19 years old, and again, it was stuttering. So I go door to door. These homes are worth $50,000 each. And I'm like, if I could sell your home for 75, would you take it? And they're like, where do I sign? So that was pretty easy to get that done. And then I'd help partner with the developer who'd get stuff rezoned, and he would, get like a shopping center or something to come in, and I'd take like a commission on it. I didn't have any capital at that time. And that's kind of what I did to get started before I went to college, and kind of had karate studios and sold real estate through college.
Man, that's an unbelievable entrepreneurial history before you go to college. That's not common, dude.
And it was fun. It was fun. Along the way, I learned a lot of lessons. My first stock was Handy City. Have you heard of that?
No.
Just because it went to zero. So in my town was Home Depot. Totally put them under. So I ended up buying Home Depot and Walmart and Coke stocks that lived in Atlanta at the time. And the crash that happened, one of the crashes, I sold everything. I didn't have a ton of money in it, but I had some money in those three stocks. And then I realized also, like, investing, like it's kind of like, it teaches you a lot of lessons about patience as well. Because when I sold during the sell-off, those happen to be three of the greatest American companies that I owned in the 80s. and I sold it to pay off a car. And that today, if that car would be over a $10 million car, I don't care how selective you are in your antique collection, it's falls short of that. So, yeah.
So that'd be like an original Cobra with about 2 miles on it.
Yeah, exactly.
$10 million car.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
So if you stuck with the car auctioning business, a good friend of mine is Dana Meekum. If you follow the Meekum auto auctions.
Oh wow! How about that? Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
If you ever want to meet Dana, we got to come to an event with us. But he's a spectacular guy. His stories are incredible. He'll be a ditch digger story too. We just haven't got him on yet. But amazing guy, fun as can be, and just a down to earth guy. So. But again, here's a guy that started kind of like you did. As a young kid, he was doing everything, hustling for money. His dad had a car lot, a used car lot. He started buying cars and refurbishing them, and he really liked muscle cars and started. Yeah, so his story, the start is kind of like yours, actually. It's similar.
You can learn a lot by buying and selling cars, I tell you that. I sold a car to a convict one time, ex-con, and I realized that he was expecting a tire warranty like a year and a half later. And I actually thought about starting a warranty program for tires after that. So, yeah, that's wear and tear, normal wear and tear. He goes, oh, okay. And I'm like, whew, that was close. I told my brother, we got to stick to real estate. This is kind of scary.
So you went to college then. Tell us about your undergrad, your 4 years in college there, and what you learned there, and what came to that.
I was there, and I was working, doing had some karate studios that I set up at like daycares because that was easy. You had a captive audience come in and teach for a little while, and if you get one kid to buy a karate uniform, you're getting 30 of them in there. So that was fantastic, teaching kids martial arts and getting to break boards at 5 and 6 and watching the mother's faces. Oh no, he's gonna break his little hand. But it's amazing which you can do. It's like, you got to think through the board. Don't stop at the board. All these lessons about think the other side. So I believe you can do it. It was good. It was good and lots of fun. And then I did real estate also. And around 89 or so, I was doing okay in real estate, made a fair amount of capital, and then real estate went in the tank. So really badly. And I was getting out of college, and I was, I liked college, but I was, I really liked working too, but I felt like it was just something I needed to get done, but I enjoyed it. And then I went after college and took a job at Merrill Lynch in Atlanta in the financial services. And back then, they were more like stockbrokers. I remember my first day, my manager tosses me white pages after training, goes, here's the hot leads. And I'm like, oh, really? This is how we're going to roll? And I thought I would do that for a few years and go back into real estate because most of my buyers of the shopping center sites were airline pilots, and a lot of them were in consolidation. Their capital went away. So I started calling just to be different in the W's. And W's are hard to say for me anyway. So I would call people and ask how I could earn an investment business. I'm like, Weir, my own name's hard, right? Weir, how can I earn your investment business? And usually I got hung up on, and then sometimes people would say, is this a joke? Like, who is a stuttering stockbroker? I mean, give me a break. That's kind of how it went. I started making like $600-700 a day, which was like huge because I had such poor conversions. Well, I'm like, I can't take this. My voice is going. Started going door to door, like in office parks. And that's where the stuttering really kicked in because it was hot and I was stuttered. So I'm like, ha ha. They're like, hey, dude, come inside. It's hot. It's the next thing you know. Next thing I open, I'm like 600 accounts the next few years. And I was like one of the top account openers in the country. And I'm like, wow. This stuttering thing, it's a bummer, man, but it's paying off, right? So that it helped in the financial services. And then I'm like, I wasn't a bad stock picker because I kept, even though I sold my Home Depot and Walmart in a crash and Coke, I would buy it for all my new clients. So I started in 89. So I bought Coke, Home Depot, Walmart, and there was a new biotech called Amgen. And then there was a tech company called Cisco that I would buy for much all the portfolios. And I mean, I didn't know how good of a growth story they would be, but it ended up giving me pretty good performance during that period of time. And then I left in '94 to go work in San Francisco. I was kind of impressed with technology and the wealth being created in Silicon Valley. So I left to move to San Francisco. And then I learned something else that, hey, I'm not maybe the best reader, because I had a non-compete clause, which they took more seriously than I'd hoped.
Oh, no.
I mean, you guys were, dude, I was 22 when I signed that thing. You can't hold me accountable for that. I would have signed anything.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, well, you're an Asian majority, brother. How about that's a bad fact. That's a bad fact. You know, so I can't call them for a year. Is that what you're saying? Wow. Okay. So I had to start over, and with my wonderful verbal skills, I knew I went straight to cold calling. So I went to the Bank of America Tower, which is across from my building, beautiful tall building in San Francisco. And there's a restaurant on top, like the Bankers Club or something. And I just started going in and out of odd floors, like it's go to floor 17, down to 13, up to 19. And this to stay ahead of security, because they were hunting me. It was like a hunt, because I was in there. It's a non-solicitation building. And invariably, I get caught each day, but I try to slip in. And after a while, they start recognizing me when I'm coming in. They're like, hey, you can't. And then ultimately, I become like a member of the Bankers Club. And I would tease them. I'm like, I'm not marketing today. I'm just going to eat, because I ended up opening a fair number of accounts, and it worked out. And pretty much in 1 year in San Francisco, between doing that and meeting tech companies, I replaced my entire business that it took me, 4 or 5 years to build in Atlanta. So it went well, and then I started to partner with other people to try to move more quickly.
Amazing, that's awesome. And so this was in San Francisco. Was in the '90s. You're saying when
the '90s, in '94, '98.
Okay. Frame. Where were you at in 2000 then, and all that stuff happened? Yeah,
so I ended up leaving my company after I partnered with a software banker when to call on software companies to try to do investment banking with them, and in that period of time, and we took a number of companies, or they did, public. And I'd hoped to manage people's money, was I was hoping to do, and then my company I was with was bought by another larger company. The person who was my banker friend or investment banker then went to go work at a big software company, and now they're the worldwide CEO of one of the top software companies in the world. And then I opened my own investment company in 1999, and it was Weir Capital Management originally, and it was started a hedge fund, had a really good performance our first year, up triple digits, and that was just from lots of tech investing. And then started to do physical real estate on my own account, like a residential, multifamily sort of things. And then as deals got bigger than I could do on my own, then I would do, hey, Ned or Billy or whoever's a friend of mine, you want to come in on with me? And then it just, one thing led to another. And over the next 20 years, it became a larger part of the business. And I still enjoy investing in healthcare technology. Today it's cloud technology, and, that I enjoy, or e-commerce, or anything that's a disruptor. The move to 5G today is something I find of a lot of interest, and cryptocurrencies. So how do you invest in change? And it's the same thing in real estate. We look for change in demands, change in housing. If it's senior housing today, or is it where's the industry moving? And if you follow the baby boomers, or that cycle, or Gen X or Gen Y or Gen Z, and you kind of see their patterns of consumption and demands that each group has that's unique to themselves. And if you determine the spending power and desire of that particular group, and then can anticipate the benefactors of their desires and how they spend their money, you can oftentimes have a good result.
Absolutely. That's wild. So right now it's tech, it's real estate. What the stuff you do today. Where were you at? Where were you at in 2000 when you're 2000 and all that stuff was going on, and you had that tech bubble and all that kind of stuff? Where were you? invested, and what happened with you then?
I was mostly under my desk during that period of time. I learned a new word, 2001, diversification. So the word of like of 1999. The reason I had such great numbers is, I invested in very speculative companies that were growing rapidly, and they did super well. And then they did real well first part of 2000, and then things kind of began to come unwound. And even, good companies that are today of Intels of the day or Microsofts, they were damaged. The NASDAQ lost almost 88% of its value in a very short period of time. So diversification, if you're, it really needed to be not just different companies in different sectors, but different asset classes. Because if the stock market goes down, it goes down, pretty much for everybody, some worse than others. And then the bonds, or if it's physical real estate or whatever. So for me, it was a period where it was very, very challenging. We had a good growth spurt in 1999, but there wasn't a whole lot of income being generated in the business, for 2000, 2001. So, but it was a good time to learn, to look for opportunities, and to try to be in a position for the next move up.
So 2001 happened. What happened here with everything you were doing, and then what happened in the stretch from 2001 to 2008, 2007, 8, when things were really good again, or built up to that. Then 2008.
No, I had things tight, like we're talking about, like payroll before, and I remember, I was pretty good at trading stock options in my own account, and I remember we're going to be a little short on payroll. I think maybe I could. And I think this Qualcomm's looking pretty good here, and they're reporting earnings. So let's put some capital there, and boom, it worked out a few times, and we're able to, hey, we got payroll, So I'd had that. It was just me and my brother, and a couple of people, and I'm like, it's a little tight right now. So we've done that. I've had that happen before, where you have the challenges with payroll or challenges with, things that come up with projects or real estate. We ended up. That was mostly marketable securities that gave us trouble in that period of time, 2000, 2001, 2 period of time, where the markets, corrected as great as they did, just about, not as much as the Great Depression, but very close, very, very significant. A changing of interest rates. And then I ended up getting into a multifamily deal. And the first one I ended up getting into, it was a phenomenal appraised, really high, way more than was actually, than our investment was. And then there were some changes with lending that happened as part of that recession that triggered in 2007 to 8 to 9 period, where banks quit lending, and we had some complicating factors. Big bank bought little bank, and then big bank doesn't want a loan on little bank's deals, and so it was complicated. And during that period of time, you have an asset that's not finished, and then its value is eroding very quickly because of the fall of the real estate market, and then the ability for individuals to obtain financing in that type of market made it challenging. So the first deal I did right out of the gates was a loser, So it ended up. Then I also learned something else about agreements: is banks also take what you sign seriously. And I'm like, you mean, when I went into this deal, you give me 20% bonus ownership for no money? All I got to do is guarantee the loan? Like, yeah, that's it, man. I'm like, where do I sign? I literally did that. I'm like, this is easy money, man. It's a piece of cake. And it wasn't until it wasn't. So you ended up learning about how seriously they take those agreements, But we went in and talked to them, and me and a partner and I, who, with three or four of us went into it. We're just buddies. It wasn't like clients or anything like that. Just 4 guys that know each other. We go in and do it. And one guy's not in very good shape. Another guy's in okay shape. I'm in a little better than him, and then one guy's in really good shape. So we ended up kind of cutting a deal with the bank. So it ended up working out. Everybody got paid back. But it was,
what year was that?
It was a challenging time. It was 2010 when it was all over. But it was through the 2008, 9, and early 10, where we had a multifamily unit, attached housing in California, that just you couldn't get financing. So we were able to get out of it, pay the bank back. But it was a challenge. Yeah, it was a challenging time. But you learn things through that. Come out the other side, and you're like, the next time I build something, I'm going to have a tenant. Because they pay rent, and that's better than building something hoping somebody will buy it.
Yeah.
So,
That's funny.
so you kind of like you learn to pivot, right? So if you make the same mistake, you make a mistake once, it's kind of okay. You want to make a different one next time. So so we are trying to what you can do. So it ended up being a blessing, a very expensive education, but it ended up creating a model to analyze risk that you take very seriously, and then you learn to invest, and I guess I always say now I begin with the end in sight, or begin with my exit in sight, because I don't go into something that I don't have an idea of how I'm getting out of it, or even contractually, the other side, is you're still risking everything that you do, but that mitigates a lot of it.
Yeah, the lessons you learn, I mean, are amazing, right? Through these highs and lows. It's easy to think you know it all when things are going great, right? And you got this is a booming market, and you think you're pretty smart, and then all of a sudden, 2008 happens, right? It changes your world, and then you say, okay, how am I going to be best served in the future to position myself for another 2008, and of course, in the last year, we've seen a lot of craziness, right? And hopefully by our losses in the past and our lessons of the past, we're positioned a little bit better to where you're not crushed so bad, right? And, so let's hear about that from 2010 on now. What'd you learn? Where did you go? I know you're in a lot of stuff. What did you get into since then that you feel your diversity is in businesses are solid?
A lot of the things I got into really have come out of like relationships and just getting to know people and doing different things, and for me it was on film was probably the most unusual thing that I did not expect to get into. And I learned a lot about film on this particular trip, but I went with a friend who was making a film in the Amazon, of all places, and it was on pantheism versus creationism. And those are big words, what they meant, but basically multi-gods and the God, and the Judeo-Christian God of creation. So we went on that. And
hey, wait, what was that movie called again?
It's called Into the Amazon.
Into the Amazon.
Yeah. So I Into the Amazon, and I'm in it. You see me in it. My son in it. It was basically a number of fathers and their sons in the journey with a creation scientist, a medical doctor, and a missionary. And we kind of go in. We're on these call them ticas, which are basically a tree that's hollowed out with looks like a weed whacker for an engine on it. Right, and you're cruising down the Amazon, and then we rented a rubber boat with a wheel on it, I forget a paddle boat, effectively, and went down the Amazon for I guess 8 or 9 days, and we spent the night with the Agaruna people, which I understand were the ones who killed Jim Elliot, the missionary. We also did some night hiking into bat caves and things, a lot of interesting father-son kind of things. But we looked at like the forest and, it's a fire, how long it takes to rebuild and grow back and so in the ecosystem. But we captured it all into a documentary. And I learned a lot of things about filmmakers. They have no idea of budget. So I agreed to finance it. So I ended up putting a little more in than I thought. But B, I really saw the impact of film. And even though this was a small film, I think it grossed $1.5 million and it was made for like $150,000. It had an impact and reached an audience that was looking for homeschool curriculum. Let's go through the Amazon with a boy and his dad, or a true scientist. This is this tree. This is this leaves. This is the flora, fauna. Here's how the ecosystem works. And it's very simplistic, but a little workbook was put around it, and it was kind of interesting. And then in New Year's Eve that night, I always set goals every year, and it was like I want to make an impact for the kingdom of Christ in the written word, spoken word, and in film as a financier and as a participant. And I really didn't know what that meant at the time. I didn't know any book writer, any authors. I didn't know filmmakers, and I didn't know anybody. Well, fast forward a couple of years, and I ended up meeting some of the larger folks in the industry. and recognizing that there were some, room for improvement and efficiencies in the faith-based area of how they finance movies and distribute. So they ended up buying into a business that did that. And over time, we've marketed or advertised or invested in probably 50 or 60 different films, more on the marketing side than the investment side, probably a fraction of that on the investment side. But it was fun. It was fun to see the impact. It was fun to see lives changed and have people see a movie on forgiveness or a movie on about children or about family or about commitment and how it begins to impact them. And sometimes like a Blind Side, which I was not affiliated with at all, but a Blind Side is a good example of a nice story. It wasn't really heavy on a message as much as heavy on love and compassion and understanding. And I think, those movies, I mentioned Blind Side, just about everybody's moved by it or, oh, wow, I saw that. And it's just impactful. There's something about, having someone's uninterrupted attention for an hour and a half that you really don't get elsewhere in any other venue that I'm aware of.
What's another movie you're happy you're a part of that you liked a lot?
Well, this would help to market would be War Room by the Kendricks. Unbroken.
Wait, you said War Room?
Yeah, War Room, Unbroken, 90 Minutes in Heaven, Soul Surfer.
You said the Kendricks were involved in that one out of Arizona?
They're in Georgia. Yeah, the Kendricks are, and then out of Arizona, there's another group that did movies like Samson and other movies like that. Fantastic, but it's a friendly environment where the people are in the faith and family area, and it's something that you're seeing it's interesting. If you heard like a Steve Green, who was one of the early on Christian musicians, who was talented, great voice, but he would record. His recordings didn't sound, like you were listening to something that was recorded at RCA, and I would say the faith-based movies of 20 years ago, of 10 years ago, were ones where people from churches would go see, and they almost felt obliged to go because the acting was terrible. The video, the camera angles, the transitions were awkward, but the message was solid.
Was that mostly, Eric, because the fundraising wasn't that solid? I mean, they just didn't fundraise well enough. Is that why?
I would say mostly fundraising, and then there was also kind of like an indie attitude. By indie, I mean independent, where you weren't really privy or had agreements, or you weren't a SAG member, or you weren't these sort of things. So you weren't really using professional light crews, professional editors, professional film. And then the cost of the equipment was so expensive, where today you can shoot something with an iPhone and edit it on your Mac and have a product that you couldn't have made 10 years ago without very, very expensive equipment.
There you go.
So I think it's a combination of a lot of things coming together. You can lay tracks down. So, and it's I think in the faith and family genre, and not that it's not this in other areas too, but it certainly seems to be, people wanting to help each other improve the craft, or you help me on my movie, I'll help you on yours. But you've seen the quality of the films increase substantially. The budgets have increased too, from $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to several million. But if you put that in comparison to the average Hollywood budget, it's still very, very small. Yeah,
exactly. Cool. So tell us about some of the other stuff that in the last 10 years that you've found has been a lot of fun to be part of, and that's helped you solve more problems and gotten where you are today.
Well, more fun is like meeting with we're involved with a company that's rapidly growing, and we wanted to be a financial alternative to them, and went to them to talk and to become that alternative, and asked to be that alternative. And they asked me, well, how much money do you have reserved to help us expand? And I'm like, zero. We haven't started yet. Well, what makes you think you can do this? And I'm like, we guys have a great concept. You have a a nice brand. I think if we had the ability to market that, we could do quite well. And I think it was just, hitting it off with some people and being just frank that I think we can pull this off. I've done this before in a different industry, not in this industry, but I think we can figure a way to work together. And we ended up, telling a good story, and we did it. So, that led to us having multiple locations for this group. And it's been a very good relationship with folks. So with real estate.
What company is that?
That's Topgolf. Yeah.
Topgolf. What a great concept. I love it.
They're brilliant guys, super smart concept. And it's not just us, there are other people who they've had as partners to do things as they expand. But we were thrilled to be with our other partners. We're thrilled to be one of the choices. And now we're seeking to do the same thing in Europe, and we're getting our first one in Germany. So that's kind of fun to do. Begin building a Topgolf in Oberhausen, Germany. We broke ground a few weeks ago, and it's going to be next to the called the Central Mall, which is the busiest mall, as I understand it, in Europe. And it's 16 million visitors a year, and we're building a Topgolf adjacent to that property. And now that we're doing that, and we've reached we've begun due diligence on other sites in Europe, other parts of Europe, and Italy and Switzerland, and other parts of Germany.
That's cool. I mean, because golf's not quite as popular in those areas, is it? Is it in America and Scotland, all that kind of stuff, or what?
Yeah, it's popular, but not as popular as here. I would say it's most popular in Korea. It would probably be probably the single most popular place.
Well, the nice thing about golf is when you talk about Topgolf, anybody can do it. It's not like you got to be a great golfer to go play Topgolf. It's a cool.
Yeah, it's actually fun
concept.
to take your friend who's the worst, because you can watch him miss and almost fall onto the netting. It's kind of it's terrible, but it's hilarious. Like they enjoy it, you enjoy it, but it's fun. So it's just a great concept. And I think what they do, it's so brilliantly, is they create, even they're kind of like COVID-19, it's kind of a natural COVID-19 with the hitting bays and the sofas and the chairs and beverage and food, and it's a separation between the stations. So it's really it's fun, and the food is good. The service is friendly. It's fantastic. And you see other people, who've done great through the pandemic, like the Chick-fil-A's of the world, who are doing extremely well with drive-throughs, and they're always are friendly in service, and they even close on Sundays, and yet they outsell the competition between 2 and 3 to 1.
Yeah. No. And again, the concept of Topgolf, it never was a game you could play 2 feet away from each other. Could be dangerous, right? So it's already in a position where you needed that social distancing, or at that point. Safe distancing, so you don't get hit in the head with a club, right? So it's automatically is perfect. So they're doing pretty well overall. There's a beautiful one I can almost see from my office right here in Schaumburg, Illinois, that was built I think a year ago.
Oh, yeah,
it's an amazing one. It's awesome. It's the latest and greatest for Topgolf, I think. I don't know if Robbie's been there yet, but I was there when it first opened. It's awesome.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I went to my first one maybe 4 years ago. And I thought, man, I would love to own one of these. And then I just, like so many other things, I just forgot about it. And then I ended up, having an opportunity to come in and participate and invest in one. And I'm like, this is kind of neat. Let's do more of this. And I think in the U.S. we have 5 locations now that we're are involved in. But it's such a great concept, and the people, again, the people are friendly. The concept's fantastic. The food, the music, everything they do is very, very thoughtful. But I think their mission is kind of bringing family and friends together and giving them a chance to interact, because again, that's something you'll spend an hour, 2 hours together, and having a meal that's interactive. And I've been there with mostly non-golfers. I've been there with my 7-year-old, and they happened to have a dinosaur there that day, which is a big hit. I don't even know if I've never seen one since, but the timing was fantastic. But he's a big fan of the dinosaurs too, so it was a good hit. But I've been there with people in their 80s, and they're way down to 7, and took my mom there, who's 82, and she hit me, and she's not I don't think she's ever held a golf club, but you hit a few out there 15 to 17 yards, and you get like 5 points on the nearest basket, and it was like she won the All-Star games.
That's right. So yeah, the cool thing is everybody can win, everybody can score, everybody can have some success, right? And it keeps them coming back. It was
the only embarrassing time I had there. I took one of my friends who was an Olympic athlete, And he's also a big smack talker, and we were smack talking each other, and he pounded me, and he said, like, yeah, next time I'm going to use my left arm. Just his left arm. I'm not even going to. You probably still beat me with that too, but anyway,
it's funny.
It's a lot of fun.
So when you look at these concepts, what's another example of something you're involved in that you're excited about that's got a lot of opportunity that you guys have exposed?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything from film. We love to tell stories. Different movies that we're involved in are things that are, whether it's about St. Patrick and Christendom in Europe and what happened there, and trying to my knowledge, there's not been a movie made about St. Patrick. There may have been, but I haven't seen it. And we have one we're excited about with that. To movies about political figures, and now there's with the filming was shut down for a fair length of time, and there's a lot of demand for content, and so I think it's an excellent time to look at investing and creating some productive and helpful and educational content, encouraging content. That's something we're excited about. Another thing, completely different than that is to think about about distribution. How do you do on demand? How do you respond to COVID-19? How do you maybe go direct to Netflix instead of trying to have a theatrical release? So I mean, those are fun things to think about and to as you move ahead. And other industries we're involved in, everything from self-storage, which is something that's very boring for a lot of people, but it's a lot of fun to look at. It's interesting in that if you look at a B-rated apartment, maybe a 2 or 3 story apartment, not like a high rise or ultra high end, but a B-rated, and if you go within 1 to 3 miles of that site, you can typically get rent on the per square foot about the same for the self-storage you do for the apartment. Folks are saying, well, I have a 1,000-foot apartment, it costs me $1,000 a month. I understand that. I have a 100 square foot storage facility and that costs me $100 a month. I understand that. So it's basically a way to have a cash flow that's similar to an apartment building with a cost structure that's very different.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. I got involved in mini storage for a couple locations in my industrial buildings and parks that I was part of, and it did well. We sold them off 10, 15, 20 years ago, I guess now, but they were definitely nice little businesses. Our problem is we didn't really run them. We just built them and said they'll come, and they kind of did, right? But those that built them and expected them to come and then serviced them did a little better than us, because we weren't great at it, right? You got to make sure you keep those customers coming back, and we weren't that great at that. So I eventually sold them, realizing this wasn't wasn't something I'm passionate about, but. Something that's great at mini storage is it's an amazing product if you do it well.
It's great, and real estate's an interesting thing. I mean, you kind of you've heard it said location, and it really is. And if for a business, really one of the most important things is just to get the best location with the greatest amount of visibility, and to make it happen. Yeah, so
absolutely. I mean, what do you see as far as ahead when you look at the next 4 years or whatever? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with this presidency and all the other things, but where do you feel like the opportunities are going to lie in your eyes when you think about the change in environment because of this COVID issue and everything else? Things have changed a bit, of course.
Sure.
Not because I'm crazy about what's happened. I think that a lot of this is just suicide to some of our states like Illinois, and I think leadership has been poor in many factors that I can see. But that's me personally, right? What do you feel it's gonna do when we've got these states that have shown they're weak in tough times, like Illinois, New York, and some of these other ones? I'm afraid a lot of businesses are gonna that are growing, that are changing and growing are gonna be uprooting. They're uprooting in states like ours, the weak ones that fall with something like this, to go to the strong ones where, hey, they figure out, hey, we'll deal with this risk and we'll be safe, but we're going to still keep people in business, and we're going to keep kids in school and business.
Right.
I'm worried that smart people that invest in business are going to say, okay, we're not going to any of these 5 states that really created suicide to themselves and their businesses in their state. We're going to go in these states that were strong through these things and actually performed, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I kind of look at things from it's kind of a two-part question. I think I'm going to look at the answer first, maybe the larger economy, both a U.S. economy and a world economy, and then drill down to like a state or county level of kind of more of an application. But in my business, I've been in the investment business for 31 years, and when I started, the Dow wasn't even at 2,000, and it's hit 30,000 cents. So it's a 15x return over 31 years. I can maybe over 31 years remember 6 or 8 months of that time where people were optimistic. They're pretty much always looking for the next shoe to drop, or the next politician, or something to happen, or a change in office. And if you look at statistically, when the Republicans have Republican House, Republican Senate presidency, stock market, and these are top of head, so grain of salt, but approximately is an 8.5% return the last 50, 60 years. If you have a Democratic office, it's higher. It's like 9.5, 10%. And that's not it's just because of spending that typically happens. And if you have a divided office where you have a presidency of one, and then the House or the Senate is divided, it's the highest. The average returns almost 11% for the stock market during that period of time. And the reason being is it's more predictable. There's less change because neither party is able to execute their individual agenda. And as a company, you can make more predictions because probably nothing's going to happen. A lot of talking, a lot of smoke, but not a lot happening.
Yeah.
Then you got to take a look at the second thing. So from a geopolitical perspective, I think it's probably, if the Republicans maintain the Senate, it'll provide that divided power, which will result in compromise. Then if you look forward at capital, there's been about $4 trillion of stimulus between PPP and special programs that have gone out into the economy. That's about 4 times what was done in the great housing crisis. So this is significant. And I don't think people really understand the magnitude of that. So if you have $100,000 and you take that money and you buy a house, that $100,000 goes into a bank that's controlled by that home builder, right? Then it ends up cycling through the financial system. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Is that 100,000 then goes into a bank. The bank can loan 90%, doesn't have to, but can loan 90% of what's in checking and savings accounts. That's they have a 10% loan reserves. So that money's lent out, not the next day, but over some period of time. That goes to somebody who wants to buy a house, car, whatever it happens to be. That money, when you buy the car or the house or the groceries, goes into another bank. That also goes through the monetary system, and those deposits can be lent out 90 cents on the dollar. So mathematically, every dollar that gets put into the economy has a multiplier of 10 over a period of 18 to 24 months. And our U.S. economy total size is approximately 27 trillion. So we had 4 trillion new dollars that were not budgeted to be put into the economy on top of a $27 trillion economy. Now, sure, it softened and it had a big pullback, but take 4 trillion, multiply that times 10, that's 40 trillion. So we have a $40 trillion cash tsunami coming at our back that will be very strong. And like looking now, like why is the stock market higher than it was earlier this year and we're still not back to normal? It's because the market's a forward-looking mechanism. So and interest rates are going to remain, likely stay low. But I always look for, how do you profit in that? Are commodity prices going to increase because of increased demand? Probably. So what does that mean for copper? What does that mean for these other things? Is there going to be a demand for housing with lower interest rates? Well, that's already happened. Are people going to change their consumption patterns? Yes, they are. Is that going to accelerate 5G, Zoom, Peloton, these sort of things? It has. Is that going to affect the Rokus of the world or the Apples or Amazons? And it does. And then who's a benefactor and who's not from a market standpoint. And then from where you choose to live and do business in our country, you're exactly right. People are now seeing, I think, in way greater magnitude than ever anticipated, is I can be, pretty productive at home. Maybe not as productive, maybe in some cases, maybe even more productive. Most people, if you work an 8-hour day, you're driving, you're leaving your office, you're going to lunch, you're coming back, you're commuting. It's not all effective time.
Yeah.
So when you're at home, you can cruise upstairs and grab a ham sammy and come back down. I mean, you're back in business, so your effectiveness is there. Your fatigue levels are oftentimes lower with commuting, traveling, things of that nature. So I think the way people do business will change. Productivity is already increased. So I think it'll be interesting to see how things go. But I think what I'm going around about that is if you have a choice of paying, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13% state tax, federal taxes in the top bracket, if they move from 36 to 39.6, that's a factor. So if 39.6 plus a 10, 12, 13, you're the minority recipient of your earnings. So do you want to stay in a place if you're going to be cruising around your house on Zoom calls anyway, or you may not enjoy what the area has to offer, or would you rather move to another very nice area? So I think that's why the kind of like the Sun Belt is experiencing a lot of growth, and the Southeast has some advantages over different areas that some people find attractive. The weather, the political environment, their approach to unions, or whatever happens to be. They're different things that appeal to different people.
Sure. Yeah, so a lot of shifting probably the population, in my opinion, in the next 5-6 years after experiencing the stuff that's gone on, right? Especially like you're saying, the ability to work anywhere in the world and do your job compared to having to go to a central office, a big difference maker, right? So
yeah, and one thing I'd like to say, one thing also I've seen a huge thing, a huge difference is companies that are experiencing maybe in the leadership's view, an extraordinary limitation on how they do their business in a state. You said maybe you're in Illinois, or maybe you're in California, or maybe you're in Washington, and you say, well, I can still do my business, but it's so restricted. However, I see the folks in Texas are wide open, and I see the Carolinas are wide open, or Florida's wide open, and you're like, and their COVID numbers aren't that different than ours. It's not necessarily a one-to-one, but for the exchange of independence and freedom to operate vis-a-vis the percentage of outbreak, it's not that different. Would I rather be in an environment that was more liberated? And maybe at the same time I go to Texas and there's no state tax on top of that, so I'm dropping 9-10% of my income, and I'm in an environment that's it's relatively open, or Carolinas or Tennessee or someplace. Yeah.
Tennessee, Florida, right? All these places,
Mm-hmm.
all these places, the zero income tax are
sure.
It's tough not to think about that, right?
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah. So when you look at mentors in your life, you've done so many different things. You're involved in a lot of different things that you're passionate about. Who are people you saw that are super passionate about either these things or others that inspired you to think the way you do? You mentioned Chuck Norris earlier on, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine. He goes out to a ranch in Montana with a good buddy of mine, and they spend time together. I heard nothing but amazing things about Chuck Norris and what a quality guy he is. But
I haven't talked to him in forever. I'd love to reconnect with him. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Who are other people in your life that kind of inspired you to think differently or be who you are today?
I would say it sounds, I'll tell you, I have a list of about 10, but my parents were fantastic, encouraging me that you can do whatever you put your mind to. I've had pastors that give you things, everything from a saying that Henry Ford says, well, you think you can or you think you can't. In both cases, you're right. Yeah. And where Jesus Christ says, a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And I think that learning from pastors, learning from family members, and I kind of view life as a buffet where I've had people tell me, you can't do this, or you're not going to make it, or you don't have that ability. And, I would like to say it hurts my feelings, but it kind of jacks me up. I'm like, can you tell me that again? I love that stuff. You're going down. I'm like, yes, let's get going. I'm like energized, right? So that kind of it, and just finding, and then seeing. I love to hear the underdog stories. Like the Olympics where these wounded veterans are competing. I just love the heart of what these guys do. So I don't know of anybody I haven't learned something from and spent time with, whether it's even something that you can even learn the antithesis of what they are. If it's like they're doing things, I would learn, maybe I don't want to do that, or maybe to do this. But, people, I listened to Napoleon Hill and Books on Tape. I've listened to Zig Ziglar substantially. I've listened to Anthony Robbins. I've listened to Robert Kiyosaki. I've read maybe a book or two a month for the last 30 years, on my subject or on goals. And what I try to look at is where do I struggle? At first I wasn't a very good manager of people or a very good delegator. I had to do everything myself, and certainly can grow in that area substantially still. But, try to learn about how to do that. And now with YouTube, you can almost search, not that everything on there is a fantastic solution, but there's books on tapes, there's Audible. So just about anything you want to learn, you can learn. You can read reviews and say, how do I find a mentor if I don't have one? And then I would just find people, whether it's at my companies at Merrill Lynch or people that I know. Most people, if you ask them and you're polite to tell you what they know or how they did it, we'll tell you. I mean, I found exceptions, but it's really rare that people won't tell you. How did you grow your pest control business, or how did you grow this, or how did you do that?
What I always found too, Eric, is when they don't want to share with you, it's probably because there's nothing to share, right? I mean, there's a facade maybe of success, but the success maybe didn't come from them, right?
Exactly. And like and just about every day I start, the good days, I start where, trying to be thoughtful, think and plan, but, you have obstacles, and I'll write, like, my goal for me is like, what's my biggest problem today? And, some days you have, how do I narrow it down to one, right? I've got so many, but pick one and then think of ways to solve it and write it down, and don't go on and prioritize your action steps based on your answers, and then take action right away. And oftentimes that's so ridiculously effective that for me anyway, I forget to do it sometimes because this really works well. And I know that some of the largest relationships I've opened over the years, where if I could call anyone in the world, meet anybody to help me with this project, what would I do? And I'd come up with some names, and then I'll try to get to them. And, sometimes it works. I'm just talked to this person in London who I've heard of for 35, 40 years, and they're going to cover a Forbes magazine, and they took my phone call. Wow, that wouldn't have happened if I didn't do that. And it's not that I'm anything, why would they take my phone? I'm not nothing special. It's just, people are people. If you're kind and respectful, they're oftentimes very easy to approach, and just
absolutely. And you find those that have had extreme success, it's because they love people usually, and they're servant-minded people, as you and I believe, right? They're servant-minded people. They love people, and they like to talk about and share their experiences of success in whatever they're great at, right? If they're the greatest in the world at something, in my opinion, then they love sharing how they got there, because they're not afraid of competition. They're the greatest in the world. So reach out to those people if you can, like you do and I've done in my life. And boy, it's amazing the relationships you can gain from people that are the best of the best in the world, because they love sharing with people that are passionate about the same thing, right?
Yeah. And most people, sadly, I think dieting is no secret. I think if you were to ask a diet, everyone's got new diets, how do I maintain fitness, a new workout program, or, this Peloton, this is the thing that will, change the world. But it's pretty much eat less, move more. That's pretty much it. Now you can make it complicated. You can have, what do you eat? When do you eat? How do you eat? How do you move? Where do you move? So you can make it complicated, but really success is just that simple. Decide where you want to go and make plans and get there, or you can make it very complicated,
Well, and what you said though is not as common as you and I might think either, to actually plan and have a plan. The stats are out there, right? 95% of people that are successful in what they want to be great at have a plan. And only 5 or 10% of society actually has a plan, right? So that one thing right there, if you have goals and aspirations without a plan, you're like a boat with no rudder, right? You just kind of, like, compared to, boy, you know what? I'm gonna meet with the right people. I'm gonna build the right plan, And that plan will vary a little bit. You have to pivot here and there, right? But overall,
Right.
man, a plan makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It does, and I think that I mean, I've given talks on goal setting before to, a fair number of people, and I kind of liken it. I'm a pilot. We talked about before we started. I fly an airplane. I haven't flown in a little while, but I fly. And if I take off, and I want to start my heading I'm going to leave Greenville, South Carolina, and I want to go to Miami, Florida. And if I do my initial heading, and if I don't make a constant adjustments, I mean, if you even on autopilot, you can feel the yoke turning every few seconds because you're adjusting for wind, barometric pressure, altitude, all kind of rain, whatever. You're always making adjustments. And it's the same in life. You're always going to be making adjustments. You're always unexpected things that come up. But if you know where you're going generally, that's the biggest thing. And I have people say, well, have you ever failed in a goal? And I'm like, absolutely. Have you ever come short? Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, what do you do? I say, I set a new goal. Like, what? Yeah, I just make a new goal. So sometimes I see this isn't working out. Maybe I was a little too optimistic about this scenario. Maybe I can't lose 45 pounds by the end of the month. So I have an amputation. 4 ounces a day. It's I don't have enough time, right? So then I have to say, maybe I do like biscuits. So I mean, how do I make a change to get there that's doable for me in my area? And you'll find that if I look at 5 areas: faith, family, fitness, finance, and friends. That's faith, family, fitness, finance, and friends. And I say I kind of do a spoke, and I've given quite a few talks on this one. And imagine a wagon wheel, and you've got a wheel on the outside, and you start from the hub, and going out maybe 5 inches is your max scale. And 5 inches, if you go the whole distance, you're a 10, and maybe an area of finances you're struggling. So instead of a 10, maybe it's a 2, and maybe relationships, well, those aren't too good. Maybe they're whatever. And you kind of go around, then you draw a line around like you're a wheel, and you look at, man, that's a wobbly wheel, and that's, I've got some areas of 3, some's a 1, some's a 4. What do I do? And then you kind of, but it's a visual of where you are and where you're struggling. To me, it's so simple. And if you do that once a month, oh man, my family's struggling, or my faith is struggling, or my finances are struggling, or my fitness is struggling, or my friends. I haven't gone in with a friend in 3 months. I've been cooped up. So how do I do this? And I remember I was speaking one time, and I said, ultimately, you want a round wheel. And the guy stood up. I said, I've got a round wheel. And I'm like, great. He goes, they're all 1s. He goes, everything's terrible, but man, is it predictable? So how do you think about that? And life's just a balancing act. You have things that you have. I read a quote the other day. It's life is 10%. I don't know if the statistics are entirely accurate, but it's at least it's directionally correct. Say 10% of life is what happens to you, and 90% is how you respond to what happens. Now, whether it's 15 or 85 or what it is, but I think direction that's correct is that, I had a stutter, I had a car wreck, and I had a choice to say, I'm going to let this keep me down. I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm not going to talk to people because I feel inferior or whatever happens, or I can push forward and just say, that's just who I am. And I'm going to use this as a strength and make lemonade out of lemons. And for a very big part of my life, I was very sad about having that happen to me. And when my stutter began to go away substantially was when I became grateful for it. And so it's kind of the same thing in anything where it's a failure, or you took a bankruptcy, or you had a divorce, or you've had a death in the family, or you've had a business not work out, or how does good come out? How does beauty come from ashes? And I think that's something to try not to lose sight of.
You also had an advantage over most people. You actually were a lemonade entrepreneur at one time too, though. So it came easy for you to make lemonade out of lemons, right?
The lemonade entrepreneur did help. Yeah, I mean, it was very helpful. And a lot of people, and it's so much easier said than done. And I guess, but just trying to encourage people to, sometimes the hardest part's just getting up one more day and trying again, and how do you do that? I tell my kids when things are rough, I mean, think of something to be grateful for. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and nothing was going well with them, and then they began to have a physical impairment, and they're like, "Wow, wasn't thankful for that I didn't have that." And are there things that you can kind of build momentum, almost like you're going to run a mile, so I'm going to walk a block first? Are there things to try to build a culture of gratitude? Be thankful in all things. Are there things that I can find to be grateful for, even though it might be challenging right now?
Well, I'd say that means so much, doesn't it, Eric? I mean, I go to bed every night, just in my prayers, being grateful for everything I got, and then I try to wake up every morning. If I don't have to get out of bed super fast to get moving, I want to lay there for 5 minutes to be thankful again and grateful again for what I have, right? And if you can think that way on a daily basis, boy, your life is so much easier, right? Because we've got so much to be thankful for. I don't care who you are. If you live in America, you got a lot to be thankful for. If you're fortunate enough that you can be a leader in business in any way, and you're leading people, man, that's a beautiful thing to be thankful for, right? If you believe in God and you're talking to God, that's something to be thankful for. So there's so many things we can be thankful for, and if you start your day, end your day, whatever you do, right, and you can do that on a daily basis, boy, your life is pretty good. And then, I mean, it's amazing how your attitude is, right, compared to otherwise. And I didn't always do this, but I definitely. To get through tough times, if you can always pick those things out that you're grateful for, it makes it a lot easier. So.
Oh, it's tough, and sometimes having people to talk to really helps. But I mean, going the end of the Amazon movie we talked about, one of the biggest blessings for me is I've met people in rural South America who didn't own shoes, didn't have anything, and were surprisingly happy. I mean, they were, I would say, on general, smiling people, happy, very simple life. And then I was there for a week and a half or so. And then when I go to leave a very rural area, and I went one place we went to, and I thought we went share Christ with this person, and they came out with a Bible and said somebody beat you to it. It was pretty funny, but to see the like, really, how that happened. But I mean, with the joy in some people's lives, you even have nothing. And then I remember getting off the plane in Miami, which is by and large a wealthy area. I mean, certainly not everyone, but seeing the frustration and anxiety and pressure, just from like a rural village to a major metropolitan area in a beautiful part of the world was a stark contrast for me. And then just so, and sometimes the difference between our expectations and our reality can really be the greater the distance, the greater the frustration we can experience. And sometimes just the idea of having a path to pursue your expectations can alleviate a lot of and enjoy the process can alleviate some of the anxiety.
Absolutely, that's awesome. You're a fun guy, man. You lead a life that's it's balanced, but yet pretty crazy, and yet you've gained all this perspective of how to handle all these things. And I think a little ADD probably, like myself and many friends. It
a little.
Again, a great blessing, right?
Yeah.
If you embrace it, right, and don't let people tell you it's a bad thing. It's a blessing. And Robbie, what are you getting out of this, dude? Young punk like you, listening in, young leader like you. What are you getting out of this stuff, bud?
Yeah, ironically, the last point that he just brought up is actually the background on my computer. The quote that I have is happiness equals reality minus expectations. So completely agree with the approach that you had there in terms of like your state of mind. I think the same case kind of holds true across every path in life, that regardless of if it's a personal relationship that you have or your career that you want to approach. I think you just need to go into it with an open mind and let the circumstances ultimately come to you. And like you said, it's how you respond to the circumstances. It's not necessarily what the circumstances are themselves. But I do have a question for you. So I'm pretty fascinated by the way that you actually explained your mentality around investing. And I think about it as more of like a human-centric approach or understanding of trends. And I do also agree, I think people are relatively predictable. So I think it's a good way to ultimately improve the probability of success for yourself. So when it does come to investing, I'm interested to understand how you pair that mentality alongside the ideology like a Wright's law or a Moore's law, and how do you then go into picking where you want to invest both your time as well as your money?
Yeah. So I kind of think about, I'll go to money first and come back to time. And maybe I'll try to get them both actually at the same time. So I had somebody tell me when I was 12 or 13, and it wasn't like a one-on-one me, it was in my church. And I kind of had a big takeaway. And he said, like, imagine if you read an epitaph, and the epitaph said, "Here lies, a loving father, fantastic friend, great business person, loyal associate, big-hearted, hugged everybody." And they walk up, and the wife's like bursts into tears and cries, and what's going wrong? Goes, they buried the wrong man. So it's like, so you're like, well, wow. So I had a guy tell me, like, at age 13, write your own epitaph, and live life to be that person. So what do you want your epitaph to say, and how do you spend more days than not, being that person or pursuing that personhood? So that impacted me. And then on the investment side, it's like, there are things that are changing and morphing. And for me, whether it's biotech or tech or finance, people are typically drawn by pursuit of pleasure or avoidance of pain. And generally speaking, so that's your most basic thing. And probably the greatest is avoidance of pain. So if you're looking at whether it's technology or biotech or health, or if things can become faster, easier, and understanding the change of technology of going from a 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and look at the change of infrastructure, will be fairly predictable in the demand of that. And if you can stream content, if you can get content, if you can download a movie in seconds instead of it taking an hour and a half. And I remember when it first on the internet, you may not remember this, but it was like making all these noises when you're signing on and going up the telephone line.
Oh yeah, the
really
dial-up.
Right? And now it's like, on my iPhone, man, what's wrong with this? I can't download a movie in 3 seconds, So, but that's kind of going back to Moore's law, but looking for where change is, and then I try to find the people who are competent to talk about it. So whether stocks, maybe a motley fool sometimes is easy for everybody to have access to, and they have good things to say. And then if you have more access, then I would call companies, or back when I was doing this, and saying, sure, you're the best, but other than you, who else do you like, in this space, or where do you see change going? And if you talk to enough people or professionals, you kind of get a feel for where change is going. So, I mean, we're changing communication substantially. Cellular communication is changing. Healthcare is changing. COVID-19 has probably changed the way we can fast track drugs from 3 years to less than a year. This is not going to be a one-off. This will change the way I think biotechs do things, and the way drugs are fast-tracked. So then if I'm looking for a biotech that has, maybe 20 companies and trials, phase 1, 2, or 3 trials, and then maybe the stock was anticipated that if a trials used to take 3 years, what if you could accelerate trials to 1 year? And would that change the valuation of the stock? That's not even in the stocks yet, because people aren't thinking that yet. But I'm thinking that's a structural change. When they began to change the first iPhone, and people saw Apple go up a ton, and like, well, it's over. Well, no, I remember I read an article 20 years ago, and it got a little bit of publicity, but I said cameras will be phones, they'll be your wallet, and they'll be your desktop computer. And people are like, burn him, he's a freak. But that's where we are today. And it's not that I'm that smart. It's just that things are just going to be more and more simple. And it's like a Tesla car. I mean, I drive a Tesla, and it's a wonderful vehicle, but the adoption rate, once you break the initial inertia, the adoption of electric vehicles, I think, is going to accelerate at an accelerating rate. whether it's Tesla, Ford, Porsche, everyone else. So how do you benefit from that? And find the emerging leaders who are part of that change. And we're like an Amazon. You have a Jeff Bezos who was there from day one to now. Find the next Jeff Bezos. Find people who are leaders in industries and invest in them. Because when I was running the hedge fund, I tried to look for companies that were going poorly and would go really well. 90% of companies are going to do poorly in a poor environment. 10% are going to do amazing in a poor environment. Maybe they still don't do as well as they did before, but they will grow in a poor environment. And when problems or difficulties hit an economy or hit something, it's always an opportunity for that 10%, of those companies or people or whatever, where they come out the other side a lot stronger and better. And
Absolutely.
if you can find who those are, then I would invest with those people and in those companies run by those people.
Yeah, we're a little, we're a group of small companies, Eric, and so same thing. We have some companies that are excelling right now, and some that are struggling. And some of it's leadership, some of it's industry, right? Some of it's not pivoting fast enough in the business we're in. But so there's a mixed bag, right? But no doubt in my mind, when I look at the ones that are kicking butt right now in this tough economy, I'm like, wow, lucky I got those. And man, how do I find more of those, right? Whether it be a great CEO that pivoted fast or just a great industry that we know is solid, right? And I mean, that's the blessing of these tough times is, really now's the time that you can actually find those companies. And if you can invest in those, boy, you're in good shape through the long haul, right? So
yeah, and on company investment and on that, you kind of want to look for category killers. Whether it's in the credit card industry, who's changing that, who's changing currency, who's changing commodities, who's changing consumption of entertainment, who's changing streaming, who's changing the portability of computers or watches, and then go with those companies. And not that I do invest in companies that are cyclically oversold or that are that were beaten up because of Corona, but there are some industrials and companies that were maybe they're down 70-80%, and then maybe they come back to where they were, but they're not going to go up 20x or 50x or 100x. It's just not going to happen. It's just not possible. But if you find a true maverick, and there are a handful of these at any given time of companies that are growing, and it begins to grow, kind of continue to invest as the company matures. Most people, the biggest mistakes that I've made personally investing were very big successes. I bought Amazon on the IPO, and I had it for a while. It was a huge win for me. I made multiples on my money, but I sold it more than 10 years ago. And in that last 10 years, it's gone up multiple 1,000%. And I would never have dreamed that. The first company ever to hit $1 trillion market capitalization was Apple. And less than 18 months later, it was the first company to hit $2 trillion in market cap. And who could have predicted? They said no one's ever going to be $1 trillion market cap. Yeah. And then 18 months later, it's double that. So it's interesting. When people kill it, they kill it. And it's hard to look for blue sky companies that, what I mean by that is, wide open potential, or blue ocean, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Blue ocean is great term. I love to hear. So we like to really come away with some nuggets, laws of success, nuggets of success, and Robbie, I know you got a bunch of them. I mean, you could write a book on Erik here, I'll tell you. But what are some of the ones you came up with that great takeaways for our listeners?
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure. I have 5 today. I probably could have had 10. I think the majority of this conversation was a quote you'd find in a book. But the first one, I usually like to just go through the order of basically the conversation that we've had so far. The first one is be as enthusiastic about others' success as you are your own. And I think that really tells a lot just about you as a person, Erik, as well as your leadership style. But I think that you can apply that to all facets of life, similar to what we were just talking about a few minutes ago. Is at the end of the day, it's regardless if you're helping a friend who's applying to a new job, or if you're helping your parents with their parents at their older stage in life as they're passing on. It's making sure that ultimately you can be there for other people at the end of the day. The second is failure is never fatal unless it's final. In the direct quote that you actually said during this conversation that I'll apply back to this is 10% of life happens to you and 90% is how you respond to what happened to you. And I really do believe that. And I think this year has been a perfect synopsis of how you can apply the coronavirus back to, it was truly all about how you responded and didn't let that absorb you as a person.
Oh, that's rough. Yeah.
Right. The third actually is the simple way to explain it is begin with the end in mind that you had mentioned. But I really like that in terms of like a framework for however you want to define success. And I think that when it comes to your career, it's what is your 5-year goal? What's your 10-year goal? Or maybe you already know what you want to accomplish in the long term. And it's making sure that you reverse engineer the right pieces today that are ultimately fostering the accomplishment of that goal over time. The fourth is really an underlying theme that I don't know if you actually directly touched on, but it's as simple as relationships matter. Like you were mentioning, you could reach out to someone in London and a few weeks later end up on a phone call with them, and it's someone you've been reading about for 30 years. Take that leap of faith. Be willing to go introduce yourself or try to foster that relationship, and it can help you ultimately achieve goals that you never thought were really possible. And then the fifth, I think, is just was really a great takeaway for everything that you had mentioned today is the breakdown of the 5 different facets of life that you prioritize. So it's faith, family, fitness, finance, and friends. And I think it's important to practice gratitude across all of those facets.
Thank you.
Awesome. You picked up on a bunch of those, some of the best of them for sure. I really appreciate you, Erik, as you're a hardworking guy that gets stuff done and learns from your mistakes of the past and continues to grow. That it's not always easy. You've had tough times like a lot of us to get to the point where you've learned a lot from them. But I like the epitaph, to think about what's going to be on that tombstone and who is that person someday. And most people I talk to think about that, they're 50, 60, 70 years old. For you to get that message when you're like 13 is amazing. Think about 13, right? So a guy like me, I've been thinking that way for the last 10 years maybe, but boy, I got a lot of stuff to do to make up for the mistakes I made the first 20, 30 years of my career. So that's pretty cool that you've thought that way for so long, because it really does matter, right? So we really enjoy having you on, man. There's so many cool things about you. And when I go to hit balls at Top Golf, I'm going to be thinking about you and how we can. I'm going to be calling you with improvements. Hey, man, have you thought about this? Hey, dude, you need to talk to your team about this or that, right?
There you go.
I'm always thinking there's got to be a way that you guys can partner with the best golf clubs in the area to drive back, drive the business back and forth somehow. I want to partner with you guys somehow in the Chicago market. I'm just trying to figure out how, because I think our golfers love Top Golf, and Top Golf, people that play there, eventually many of those people could be, the minor leaguers that get into membership someday, right? They start there, get a passion there, and they want to go play at a course. So the back and forth could be pretty cool. But I'm not sure how that. I'm going to think about that a little bit selfishly, because I think it's a great concept. So either way, yeah. So I love the wheel too. I love thinking about the 5 things that matter the most in your life, and weighing those on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, annual basis, right? And how that wheel's rolling, man. Is that wheel pretty wobbly, or is it pretty balanced? And that's a tough thing to manage. But boy, if you can, that it makes life a lot easier for sure.
Yeah, it's good for fast feedback. I don't always like what it says. Wait a minute, I was maybe a little too harsh on myself with that one, but it's helpful. So
well, thanks for your time, brother.
Never lose your
dude.
humor, Erik.
But
I said never lose your humor. I love his humor.
Well, there's one more thing I would say too. I've met a few people like you, Erik, that have had stuttering issues that have become uber successful, and I think it becomes a great differentiator, right? When you have a challenge in your life and people can visually see it, right? Whether it's a friend, Bo Jackson's a friend of mine, and Bo has great stories about his stuttering and how he deals with it and all that. But boy, another great successful guy that constantly is learning and growing he's 50. He just turned 58 here the other day. But again, for Bo, very similar. He people got a kick out of him because he owned it, right? And nowadays,
Right.
still he owns it, right? And he's such a cool guy. It's a differentiator that I think shows humility and shows a person, just a regular person that has their own challenge here or there, right? And so whether it's a friend of mine, friends of mine that are in a wheelchair that have had, whether it's through birth or through accidents, right? I look at these people and I love having my life because I see them get through the difficult challenge that they have to be successful. And so it's so cool when people can actually look at those things as a blessing instead of others that might look at it as a crutch. And hopefully you inspire others that have an issue, right? To say, man, if Erik could do all that and kick butt in business and do all the things he's doing, hell, man, I can do it too, right? So
that'd be great. That'd be great. That's the goal. Yeah, that'd be great.
It's not that it'd be great. You do that. I guarantee you do that every day. You're inspiring people every day because they're like, man, if that Erik dude could be so successful, I can do it too, right? And that's the fun part of life. Is be an example with your shared experiences for all those people that want to you want to accomplish something in their lives, right? So we're blessed to have you. I can't wait to meet you face to face.
Likewise. Look forward to meeting you.
Come to Chicago, look me up, and I'm gonna
careful about the golf invites. I might head up there, so that'd be fun.
Well, Mike, if you don't head up here, I'm gonna come looking for you because you can't be a sissy and play those South Carolina golf course all the time. You gotta come up and play a man's course, right? Bull Valley.
That clock begins. Oh boy. Okay. I see that. I'm gonna get a band.
He'll play lefty.
Bull Valley on my head. Tied on like Karate Kid.
Well, thanks for your time, brother. You're awesome. I can't wait to meet you in person. So
yeah, likewise. Great meeting you both.
God bless you, brother.
Thank you, Erik.
Until next time, thanks for being in here and listening to us at Ditch Digger CEO. See ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.